Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. It's the final session on the second day of this great conference. I hope you have learned a lot and are still feeling energized and ready to learn a little bit more in this last session. Um, I want to introduce you to the topic here, driver's education for all. Um, I want to give you a little bit of a background on how we came to this topic. So I work with Atlas as the transitions coordinator. I've been in that role since August 2023. And there were a couple emails, questions that were kind of coming into Atlas about driving. And, maybe once or twice, it's kind of just a coincidence, but there were several. And I wanted to share that because if you seek out some resources or ask Atlas some questions, you never know if it could turn into a session or a conference or some other type of learning opportunity. So you just never know. And that's really how this came about. It's been trending, I guess you could say. So this is what we're going to accomplish today. These are our objectives. This session is a panel. We've got 4 great panelists from around the state who are each teaching driver's education. Maybe the population is a little bit different delivery models and educational levels, and they're going to share how they do driver's education within their program. And within the 4 panelists, we have one of them as a regional model. We've got online learning, and then Craig is going to be joining us talking about the online statewide offering for CDL. So we kind of are covering everything from English language for driving to potentially career pathway type work. We're also going to share a lot of resources. Of course, when I go to a conference, I want to know what are you using, what's working, what's not working. So we're going to share those types of things. And then at the end of the session, we'll have some extended time for questions and answers. And so that's our objectives for today. I'm just going to briefly introduce our panelists. We're going to hear from them soon enough, and they'll be able to share a little bit more. But we've got Leah, Kylie, Kim, and Craig, who have all really generously shared their time and expertise today. So I'm looking forward to hearing from all of them. They are in the driver's seat. I love a good theme. So we're going to go with that driving theme, right? So, why are we talking about driver's education? Why is that a topic in ABE and specifically for literacy, language and literacy, this conference? Well, I've been in ABE since 2005, and I remember one of the first activities I did when I was working in the Learning Center at a correctional education program was looking up driving records. Once a month at the jail, we had a driver's test. And it was maybe 40 people that took the Class D driver's test. So for me, this is kind of something that I've always enjoyed working with students on. But there's a lot of academic content that we cover in driver's education. I've got a little bit of information here about the alignment with Minnesota ABE content standards. We're looking at technical texts, there's vocabulary involved, and we also have some ACES TIF skills that are involved with studying driver's license content and moving towards taking the test. We've got things like navigating systems, critical thinking, and also learning strategies as they try to persevere through studying for the test and passing the test. It's also something that students are really motivated by. This is a high interest topic for learners of lots of different levels. Again, kind of reflecting on my own experience in ABE, when I was working at the jail, we would run these drivers' records, and there would be 5 pages or 10 pages, or I remember somebody's driving record that was like 22 pages long, and there were tons of fines. And yet, this person was just so motivated to work on getting their license back because what is it really? It represents freedom, autonomy. I need to get to the places that I need to go in order to do everyday activities. Not having a driver's license can be a huge barrier for students, for education and employment, but really in lots of other elements of their life, being able to access resources and just daily activities, right? So those are some of the reasons why it's such a popular topic with our learners. So one of the reasons I think that there was just kind of a lot of buzz recently about kind of wanting to learn about what driver's education resources are out there is because in Minnesota, we had a pretty recent change in legislation that's called the Driver's License for All legislation that was passed just in October of 2023. And I'm going to go ahead and click on the link here because I wanted to show some of the resources that are available. Let's hope it loads pretty easily. So again, it's called Driver's License for All, and there's some great information on the website that's from Driver Vehicle Services talking about what this means. So the idea is that now, whether you are a legal resident of Minnesota or not, you have a process where you can earn a Class D driver's license, a permit, or a state ID. Before October 1st, 2023, there wasn't a process in place for those who are undocumented. So this is a huge game changer for a lot of our students that are in this scenario. I did want to point out some of the resources that they have. I'm sure it's maybe not super huge on your end, but they've got a lot of different resources in different languages. And it's not just, one or two different languages, there's quite a few. There's some great graphics that could be printed off and posted around your ABE site or shared with students. So I wanted to make sure that everybody is able to see that. And we do have another slide here with additional resources. We won't be sharing them in the chat necessarily, but everybody will have access to these slides through the participant folder, and you can access these later. So I'll point out a couple things that I have on here. At the Atlas website is a great resource for driving curriculum and materials. And the website is so huge and it can be a little intimidating to try to find things sometimes. I wanted to mention that all of the driving resources are in the adult career pathways section on the Atlas website. So, you might be thinking adult career pathways, nursing, education, things like that. We have some resources there that kind of don't necessarily fit into one specific adult career pathway, and that's where the driving resources are. And if you explore those, you can get access to those things, or maybe if you explore those resources and feel like something is missing, please reach out because we're always adding additional content to the Atlas curriculum resources. I also have this link here for driver's license for all information. Again, there's lots of different languages on there, great graphics that can be shared with students about what are the steps to get your driver's license if you are undocumented. And then many of the panelists will talk about resources that they use, and several had some of the same things that are like key essential driving materials. And I have links here to the manual in English and in Spanish. Currently, those are the only options we have. Those are PDF versions that you can print out. And then there's a couple of resources here at the bottom about practice tests. And the one here, that's a 5-page practice test from Driver Vehicle Services. So that's like the official agency that does the testing. There's just the one practice test, but I like that there's no ads. It's a PDF. You can print it, you can share it. It's a great resource. I saw that in several of the presentations from the panelists. There's also another free resource that people are using to work with students on driving, and it's called drivingtest.org. And there's many, many practice tests here. It is free, although there's some ads, and there's part of the website kind of is encouraging you to maybe purchase an enhanced set of tests. So, be skeptical a little bit with that, or cautious with students in accessing that resource. But what I have found with folks on driving is some people need many, many practice tests. And so it's nice to have resources where there's just a lot of test questions to help people get some experience there. So we are going to move to our first panelist, Leah. So I'm going to ask her to unmute and share her video, and then she's going to take us through her slides.
Hi, I'm Leah Hamann. Like I said, I am from Detroit. I teach for Detroit Lakes. I also teach for North Central Minnesota, but I teach this class through Detroit Lakes, and it is a regional online career collaborative course. And our target population, as you see, assessment level, you can look at CASAS. I have actually two classes. One is kind of a slower pace that lasts for 5 weeks. And so that score can be a little lower because we go much more slowly. Whereas the fast paced, I do the same amount of content in 3 weeks. So there, the score has to be a little higher. The first course, when I first started teaching this, was actually just in this last fall, was my first time teaching this course. I thought the first course was going to be mainly English language learners, but I also had several native speakers that took the first course. And then I was surprised in the last course, I had some English language learners. So I guess that teaches me not to assume. And the schedule is Mondays and Thursdays from 6:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. via Zoom. And it's called Knowledge and Content for Written Driver's Exam. That's the actual name of the course. And as I mentioned, the first one runs for 5 weeks. That's the slower pace. The next one runs for the next 3 weeks. So that one goes more quickly, but it's the same content. So next slide, please. All right, the curriculum that I use is from the Minnesota Driver's Manual that I downloaded from the Minnesota Department of Public Safety. And I sent a link to all the students and to their adult education teachers, so that make sure that they would have a printed copy, which many of them prefer, or to at least have it downloaded on a device. And then teacher created slides. I did not create them. I inherited this course from another instructor, but I did make some changes for myself. And then other materials. Teacher developed vocabulary and knowledge worksheets, and then some practice tests. So what I do is students are assigned to read a chapter or a part of a chapter of the Minnesota Driver's Manual, and they are given vocabulary worksheets for the chapter that they are assigned. And then after that chapter is assigned, then they are assigned knowledge worksheets. And then a couple practice tests thrown in kind of at the middle of the class and at the end of the class. And then as far as testing, all I do is when it comes time for the students to want to take the test, I refer them to the driver's manual, and where there is plenty of information, I send them a link. We don't help with testing fees or anything like that, but do give them the information that they need to access what they need. All right, next slide. So some of the strategies, like I already mentioned, is that I give vocabulary worksheets that are assigned one class prior. And then after, or not, yes, then after that chapter, after we go through it in class, then they're given a content worksheet. I send links for all the worksheets. And again, the students can, either write their answers on paper or they can copy out the worksheets, send me pictures or links of their stuff that they finished. And then within the slides, there are some videos. We just started this fall course on Monday of this week, and last night we watched a YouTube video about what to do if you were ever to stop by a police officer. So there's all sorts of different videos in there, different interests. One was on the penny test that you use to check the tread on your tires. So we cover a lot of things. And then the night that the assignment is due, we go through it together in class, and often we'll have students take turns answering the questions. Which, yeah, some of the challenges is keeping it interesting. Kind of a funny story, I had a student who was also in my adult education class, and I asked her, is the class boring? She said, no, teacher, it's not boring. I said, be honest with me, is it boring? She said, no, it's not boring. Because sometimes I think as teachers, when we know something really well, we think it might be boring to teach it. But I guess to the students, hopefully she was being honest with me, but to the students, if it's new material, it is interesting. I do get sometimes questions that I don't know the answers to. We talk about how you have to have certain kinds of insurance. You have to have your insurance card. And one class, the student wanted to know about all the different kinds of insurance. And I just said, I can't help you with that. You'll have to look at something else. So sometimes questions that we don't know the answers to. Attendance, as always, is an issue. Students have jobs and families, but it is in the evening. So sometimes that helps with attendance issues. Then class participating. Students who are English language learners sometimes are a little hesitant to share, especially on Zoom, where it's even more difficult because of their pronunciation. And sometimes students will, turn off their video and get doing something else. I'll ask them the question and then they're like, oh, I wasn't paying attention. So yeah, the class I can't say that word today, is a challenge. And I do believe that is my last slide. Is it? Can you go on to the next one? It is Kylie.
And we have a number of questions in the chat for you, Leah. Would you like me to read them aloud to you, or do you want to just do that from the chat?
Yeah, I can look at the chat. Thank you.
The first question was from me.
Oh, okay. What's your question?
Is this an online class, in person, or hybrid?
It's it's an online class. And so it's all on Zoom, and then the assignments are all TVMs that they then send me. Like I said, I tell them to take a picture of their work. So yeah, it's all online.
Cool. So teacher verification model for the asynchronous part and Zoom for the live part. Wonderful.
Exactly. Okay, actually, let me see. I am having trouble seeing all of the questions. So Susan, go ahead and read them if you would like. That would be awesome.
Yes. Okay. So then the next question was about homework. Do you find your students struggle to complete the homework?
Sometimes yes. Yeah, I guess that's kind of a given. Yeah.
That's just kind of a given in our field. Yeah.
Yeah, right. I do give that, I tell them we'll go over it the next week. And I say, I don't want you to copy the answers, but I do give them a chance to turn it in the following week. So, because I tell them you're not getting graded, obviously, it's more something to help you learn the vocabulary and the content.
Yep. And then the next question is there a fee for your class?
No, if any student who is enrolled in an adult education class, then they are able to take this class.
And I
And
think one more, which is, do you have a way for students to practice behind the wheel once they pass their permit?
no, I don't have anything to do with that. So, yeah.
Okay. Oh,
All
and
right.
one more. One more has
Okay.
come in. How often do you run this class and when is the next one? Our class is in person and some students have asked for an online version. We can't do that until this summer.
Okay, now I am new to ROC, the regional online career collaborative, but I believe that there are courses that run in the fall and then the spring. Last fall was my first time teaching it. And then now teaching it, it doesn't feel like spring, but we're calling it the spring semester. So if you are more interested in checking that out, I guess I would look into the ROC courses. And Kylie might know more about that. I think she's been teaching rock longer than I have. So not to put any more information that Kylie has to provide, but
And for though this is Carly, I'm just a voice
okay. Yeah.
on Zoom now. For those who are not familiar with rock and don't feel like you need to speak entirely to it, Leah, but
Okay.
this is in the north. It's a regional model where maybe a year or two ago, a driving class might have been happening across 5 different programs serving a couple students each. And now the model that you guys are utilizing is, hey, we can have a driving class at different levels, combine those students and put it online. And in a way, it's maybe more efficient or more flexible for students. Maybe you could you tell us maybe how many students were in your class and maybe where they were from, or just to get an idea of that?
Yeah. So last night, I had a class, 5 students. One was from Detroit Lakes, one was from Duluth, another one was from Alexandria, and I don't remember where the other couple students were from, but yeah, they're from around the state. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, and I guess I would say they're from around the state in the north.
Okay, yeah.
It isn't intended to be a class that somebody from a different transition region joins. But I think what's really helpful is just seeing this model,
Right.
and the South has their own version and maybe others do as well. So that's a key takeaway and what I feel like is a very innovative solution to a challenge.
Yeah.
We only have 3 students. How are we gonna, have a sustainable class type of thing? So
Yeah, especially outside of the metro area where, it's a long distance to drive from Alexandria or from Duluth or whatever to get there. Yeah. Yes.
And then there was one more question asking if you get interest from, she's got an acronym here, and I think it probably means adult English learner students. So do you get interest from non-adult English learner students? How do you
Yes.
address that need?
Right now, the class that I'm teaching, there are 2 of them that are English language learners, and then the other 3 are native speakers. So, yep, it's a combination.
And I wonder if she's also wondering just if you get interest from, sorry, this is Astrid, from students who are not eligible adult education students and how you handle that?
I don't know. I don't take care of the registration, the teachers, well, I've registered some of my own students, and I know that an adult education instructor has to register the students. So yeah, they have to be part of an adult education program. And I don't know if there's been interest from, other people. There may have been, but yeah, I can't really speak to that.
well,
All right,
thank you
that's
for
everything
your
in the chat.
questions. Yeah, that was great. I'll advance the slide here, and Kylie is our next panelist.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Kylie Kunkel, and I'm a beginning ESL teacher in Moorhead. And like Leah, I also teach a ROC class, which is the Regional Online Career Collaborative. And like Carly said, that is a collaboration of consortia in Northwest and Northeast Minnesota. And I do have the link to the ROC website here in the slideshow, so that'll be available to you after our presentation. You can go and check that out. And I think maybe Alice, who is our program leader for the ROC, is going to put that in the chat as well. So this class was developed because I could see a need in my class. I would often have students come up to me and say, can you help me learn how to drive? Can you teach me about driving? And like many of us know, we don't have the time to teach very specific topics like driving. And so that's how this class was developed. And my class is English vocabulary for the Minnesota Driver's Manual. So mine is the very beginning level class, and I'm just focusing on vocabulary. So this is a 10-week course that helps focus on the basic vocabulary and knowledge that is needed to help English language learners begin studying for their written exam. Students will most likely not be prepared to take their driving exam after my class, but I'm hoping to expose them to the vocabulary and help them get a better understanding of words that are associated with driving and the rules of the road. So my class is a good fit for students who have a 190 or above on the CASAS Life and Work test, or a 197 on the new Reading Steps test. My schedule, I am offering this class Tuesday and Thursday afternoons from 12:30 to 2 o'clock for 10 weeks. So my class is a much slower pace. It's 10 weeks, we go slower. The spring class will actually begin next Tuesday, January 30th, and it will run through April 4th. And this is strictly an online class. My delivery platform is Google Meet. So it's helpful if students have like a little bit of understanding of how Google Meet works, but I do go over that with them in the first couple of classes. And we definitely have a learning curve of how to use Google Meet, how to mute and unmute ourselves. And then there is that ROC, the Regional Online Career Collaborative website, linked for you if you have more questions. So we can go to the next slide. The curriculum was teacher developed using the Minnesota Driver's Manual. So my colleague and I, we took the Driver's Manual book, we looked through it, and we highlighted what we thought was the most important vocabulary. And that is how the curriculum was developed. Materials, you can see my list of materials, and I'm going to go a little more in depth on each of those on the next slide. And then testing, we do not refer to testing sites or help with any of the fees associated with taking the knowledge or the road test. Of course, if a student has questions about where they can go to take a test, I will help guide them in that right direction. And like Leah, we don't do anything with behind the wheel. I know I'm in Moorhead, so Fargo Moorhead, they do have like some driving schools that I could refer them to, but a lot of those are costly. So we don't do anything with helping them, teach them in the car how to drive, but just teaching them the vocabulary. And we can go to the next slide. So my strategies, I have created slideshows that highlight the most important vocabulary. I use a lot of pictures. We use YouTube videos to highlight the vocabulary words. I think videos are important and a good way to teach students about driving vocabulary. I also created worksheets that highlight the important vocabulary words, and then they do a lot of activities, like we do matching the words to the definitions. They put the vocabulary words in alphabetical order. We do spelling practice, so they get a lot of work on the worksheet. So I will teach a lesson and then assign the worksheet after, and then at the beginning of our next class, we go over the worksheet together. And I have the students participate in going over the worksheet. So I'm hoping that they did the worksheet at home as homework, but if they didn't, we're doing it together in class. I also use the adapted study guide of the Minnesota Driver's Manual from the International Institute of Minnesota. And this is a free study guide that is available for anyone to access online. And what I like about it is that they highlighted important information in red and in bold font, because the driver's manual is so big. There's so much in there to study and focus on. So I like this one because it kind of highlights the most important things. for them to focus on. I also use online practice tests, and like Kylie said, there's some of them have ads, so you have to be a little bit leery about that, but I usually use them in class. If we have an extra 15, 20 minutes, we'll just do some practice questions. And I tell my students, you're probably not going to know all the answers to these, and that's okay, but I want to expose them to some of those questions so that they're getting a little bit of practice with that. And I have my website linked there. And then I also use WordWall. WordWall.net is an online resource where you can make custom activities for your class. So there's a free version where you can create up to 5 free activities, or you can pay for a subscription, which is about $75 annually, and you can create as many resources as you want. So I like that website because you could do matching games, you can do quizzes, flashcards. There are a lot of different activities that you can create on there. And what we usually do is I will present my screen and we'll kind of do the WordWall activities together in class. I'm not having my students actually go to WordWall and do them independently. Just with the beginning level students, sometimes I think it's easier to do it together. I also use Kahoot. Kahoot is a free online resource that allows teachers to create games that are like a quiz that all students can access on their own device and play at the same time. I created a Kahoot to go along with every one of my lessons. And in a moment, we're going to practice one so you can see how it works. So let's actually practice. You'll see the question on my screen, and on your screen, on your device, you will have colored squares. And you choose the colored square that matches the answer that you see on my screen. So it works best on a phone, I think. If you have a phone, you can go to www.kahoot.it and click join. And then when you click join, you will be asked to enter a game pin. So Carly, yep, you can click start, and it's going to bring up there. It gives you the website to go to. And there is also a Kahoot app, which makes it a lot easier for my students. I always encourage them to download the Kahoot app. So you can enter that game pin, and now we're waiting for people to join in. Here we go, we have one person. There we go, some people are joining in. And there is a QR code. Thanks, Carly. Yeah, most people know how to use those QR codes now, so that's great.
I love these funny little avatars here.
Yeah, my students absolutely, it takes a few class periods for them to understand how to get into Kahoot, how it works, but once we do it, they love it. And I like it because it's an assessment tool for me. I can see who answers the question correctly and who doesn't, so I can see who needs a little bit more extra practice. Okay, just for time, I think we'll get started. If you're still logging in, I saw, I think Susan put the pin in the chat. So like I said, you will see the question on my screen, and on your screen, you are going to click the correct color of the answer. So Kylie, if you want to start. And I usually read the question to my students so that they're hearing the question as well. So number 1, what do you use to stop your car? Lights, brakes, taillights, or steering wheel? So you're going to click the color of what you think is the correct answer. And you can give your Kahoot a certain time limit. I usually do about a minute, especially for the first couple of weeks. It takes students a little bit to figure out how to use it, but you can do 30 seconds if you want your Kahoot to go quicker, or you can do 2 minutes if they need a little more time. Okay, Carly, if you want to skip, it'll show us. There we go. 13 of you got the answer correct, and 3 of you said light. And then if you click next, it'll give you the breakdown of, if you click next up on that upper right-hand corner. There you go. It'll show you who got the question right, which I really like. Like I said, that's an assessment tool for me. And then if you click next, Kylie, we'll go to the next question. We'll do one more question. What is a sound-making device in a car? A muffler, steering wheel, horn, or airbag? Yeah, and if you want to skip, there we go. 13 of you got the correct answer with horn, and 1 person said muffler. And if you click next, we can see who got the question correct or who's the leader. There we go. So I just wanted to give you a little taste of Kahoot. I think Kahoot is a fun way to have the students interact, a little assessment for teachers. And I also just heard in my last session, I had never heard of this resource, but quiz.com. And I like that one. It's similar to Kahoot, but rather than just giving the color blocks for the answers, they have the answers on there. And I like that. I might look into that for my class. Some of the challenges that I have in my class are student engagement and class pace. So, you know, adult students, they all come to class with differing experiences, different language and reading levels, and different life challenges, which can make studying for a driver's license difficult. A lot of my students tell me, oh, I had my driver's license in my country, but they're not able to read and understand the English language enough to pass the written exam. The written exam is challenging. And then a lot of them have jobs, they have family, they have children that they're taking care of. So those are all unique challenges that students bring to this class. And so sometimes the class pace can, like Leah said, sometimes it feels boring for me. I've taught them.
We have a few questions in the chat. I think I want to scroll back up and find the first one, which was, are your word wall activities publicly published and how might we find them?
I think she froze.
Oh no, did we lose Kylie?
I think so.
Oh no.
Looks like she's back. Kylie,
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't know what happened there.
we
You
lost you for a
froze up
minute.
for a minute.
And if you want to try no video, that might help, but you sound fine now, but
Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
I'll
it was
turn on my
fine all
video.
along, and then you just stopped out.
Yeah, I have no clue what happened, and I'm at school, so I don't know why the internet should be good here, but I apologize. So technology is a big piece of my class. We use Google Meet, and during the first few classes, I always go over ground rules for attending an online class. You know, be respectful, keep yourself muted when you're not talking. I usually have a smaller class, so if they want to keep their video on, I appreciate that. I like seeing their faces, but I understand if they want to keep their camera off as well. I use these icon cards, which were shared by another ESL teacher during COVID. She shared them on Instagram and said anybody can use them, and I love them because I find with beginning ESL, it's helpful to have a picture. So if I'm asking them to mute themselves and there's a lot of buttons on Google Meet, they're not really sure what to do, I hold up the picture of that mute button and it helps them understand that. So those icon cards are linked there for you to use if you want to use those in your online class. And once students understand the technology, usually after the first week or two, then class becomes much easier and it's much more fluid for everyone. And so yeah, that is what I have to share about my driving class. I'm not sure if there was any questions.
There were a couple. So one of them is about your word wall activities. Are those publicly published and how might we find them?
That is a good question. I think they are public. I will have to, I can go back and add some links into this slideshow so that teachers can access them.
And then similarly, is there a link to your Kahoots? And are those in the resources? And do you have one for each lesson?
I do have one for each lesson. They are not linked in here, but they are public. I can link them. I will make sure to add links to both of those things into the slideshow.
Think
Hopefully the
that was
screen
all
will
of
come
them.
back, you guys.
There's a bunch of like
Ooh.
conversation happening in the chat, and I'm trying to scroll through it all and see if we got all the questions. I think we did. If somebody had a question that was not addressed, feel free to post it again and we'll read it out.
Do you guys just see a blue screen?
Yes.
Okay,
What happened
yeah.
to your slide deck?
I don't know. I will work on it, but there were more questions, I think.
I think it's more just conversation happening
Oh,
about
okay.
other people who are doing
Resources
similar.
and yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
great.
Mhm.
I'll try this.
And a comment about how we wish that we could count past exams and driver's licenses as measurable skill gains. Wouldn't that be nice?
Okay, maybe. Yeah, I don't know.
We see your screen now, Carly.
Okay,
Yeah,
yay!
yay.
Ah!
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Kim Sombke, and I teach level 3 English language learners in Wilmer, and I teach for the Glacial Lakes Consortium here. So I also teach, I have taught basic computer skills in the past. I manage our website, and then I teach this class, English for Driving. So that is the title of the class for us. You can advance, Carly. The name of the course is English for Driving. And so I'll talk a little bit more about why that's the name for it. It's not currently a teacher, sorry, I just forgot the teacher verification model. Is that right? It is not currently approved as a teacher verification model, but I believe that's being revisited. So that's maybe in the works. So I was handed a curriculum, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that on the next screen, but I was handed a curriculum with the intent that this class would be a video class, a class that I could pre-record, and hopefully at some point it would become a teacher verification model, and or at least it would be available at our site for students who want to take a driver's course from time to time. So the target population originally, you can see I kind of color coded. I'm a bit of a color coding freak, but originally the CASAS score for the assessment level for this class was for us CASAS Life and Work level 3 and up. So like 204 and higher. And that was a regional offering when it did become a live class. So originally, this class was intended to be a pre-videoed class. Then it, during COVID, became a live online class. So a live Zoom class. That's the platform that we do use. So regionally, it would be Wilmer, Hutchinson, Marshall, Mankato, the Southwest region where Wilmer is located. Now, more recently, we have decided, particularly since the driver's license for all in Minnesota legislation, to try it at our site because it was in such high demand. We had so many students asking for it. So currently, then it is now being offered for levels 2 and higher, so more like a 195, 197 CASAS Life and Work. And it is considered a transitions class. So it's a pathway to the CDL, which I know Craig is going to talk more about. But as a transitions class, we are able to offer it to students who may at some point want to attain their CDL. So the schedule for the class, the delivery method originally, it was Mondays, it's still Mondays. Originally, it was 6 to 8:30 p.m. via Zoom. That was the regional class offering. So 2.5 hours for about, I think our first session, we did 12 weeks. And then more recently, I think it was 9 weeks. We'll talk a little bit more about why that was the case, but it's a challenge to ask students to tag along for 3 full months. So right now I am offering the class from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. and that is high flex style. So that's at our site. And it is Monday evening still. Yeah, 6 to 8. So 2 hours instead of 2.5. And then regionally, we've had 3 offerings to date. So 3 different sessions. But at our site, I just finished teaching our first class for this new session this past week on Monday. So January 22nd was the first class. And this time we've decided to offer it in 2 parts. Mostly, I think this is just to help students entertain the idea of a smaller commitment at a time. I think persistence, which we'll talk about in a minute, is what we're hoping to attain. So in 2 parts, we advertised the class, each with 4 classes. And this is the first time we've tried it that way. And so Carly, if you could advance the slide, I thought I would just show you the specific advertising tool that we used. This is, yep, here it is. Yep. So this was our slide. This was our advertisement. We now sent this home via Remind for students. We had it posted around the building, but class offering in 2 parts. And you can learn at school or from home on Zoom. All right, you can advance the slide. So the curriculum was, like I said, handed to me in the form of a Google folder. And so it was originally created, I believe, by a woman named Jill, and I don't know how to say her last name, Belke of Osseo Area Schools. And this is the curriculum that is currently located on the Atlas site. When I was approached about this session and asked where my curriculum came from, I was like, oh, here, this is where it is. Oh, wait, that's exactly what you already have, Atlas. Wow, okay, we match. I did take that curriculum and turned it into slideshows and, of course, added updates because the Minnesota Driver's Manual does get updated frequently, as well as I embedded YouTube videos to help support language learners because I felt like that's maybe where there were gaps at that point. So a lot of teacher additions there as well. And then the materials that I give students paper copies of a few things, even if they're at home. I want students to have the vocabulary on paper. It's an alphabetized list, many pages long, but I feel like it's really important that they can have that reference point during class. Also, I created a Google site, a website for students as our sort of home base. And I provide a QR code along with dozens and dozens of links on that site with teacher slideshows and with some Quizlet lessons, things like that. And so, Carly, if you could please click on website right now for me. You can see anything that was underlined in our slideshow is a link. So this is my English for Driving website. You can see at the all that's offered here on the home page is the name of the class. You have your join Zoom link. All students have to do to join is click that button, and they are given the QR code for this site. So if they're using an iPad or a phone, they can easily access it just by scanning that code. At the top of the page, you'll see all of the subpages within the site. So the calendar, which is the same as I've already shown you, the calendar of classes. And then if you click on links, this is where really all the magic happens. These are all of the different links with student resources. And they're embedded within my slideshows as well. I refer back to this page repeatedly. There are some learning chocolate lessons. You can see there are specific laws that are referenced. Distances, because memorizing the distances on the knowledge test is essential. You have to know distances for many things. So if you continue to scroll down, Carly, you'll see this. This is just a great, I think, study resource for students to see all of those distances, and they can kind of quiz themselves. And I have like pre-tests embedded into every slideshow. And like Kylie said, even if students don't completely understand everything from those pre-tests or practice tests, there is, for my class, repeated exposure to those same questions over and over and over again. And if you scroll up a little bit again, Carly, there should be a link there also with some practice tests. Yep, in the middle, I think it said Minnesota road signs practice test. There's a YouTube practice test. Just above that is a Quizlet. And I can't take credit for it. I actually think it was made when we did this as a regional class. There were 2 teachers via Zoom. One was managing, letting students in and fielding all the questions. And then I was teaching the class. I think she actually made this Quizlet. I should double check that, but it's there for people to use. Quizlet does require an account, but it's a great studying resource. Students can do matching games. There are flashcards. There are tests inside. There's some writing activities. So really, this is to support English language, contextualized into this driving class. So there are other sub pages at the top. The slideshow lessons are there. All of my slideshows are there. I think it's great if anybody wants to ever use those. You are welcome to. You are welcome to make a copy. You are welcome to make them your own. Video classes are also there. So this is me teaching the classes. However, we prefer students to do this at our site. So then, of course, we can garner their contact hours as well. Okay, so if you want to go back to the slideshow, great, thank you. Like I said, there's also Quizlet lessons that I refer to often within the slideshows when I'm presenting. So then referring to the testing for the actual knowledge test, we help students, I help students by, I usually put up a map, depending on where my students live. When I was teaching this as the regional Zoom class only, of course, I had students in Marshall, Mankato, Hutchinson, Wilmer, and surrounding areas. So there were different sites we needed to find. The fact that students now need to schedule their test in advance via the website, I do my best to just include all those specifics within my slideshows, and students then, you saw, have access to the slideshows if they're able to navigate through that. And then at the bottom of the slide that you're looking at in yellow is the link to the full current curriculum. And that's just another way, if anybody wants to later go in and just view the entire Google folder, you are able to make copies of what's there if you'd like to, and make them your own. And so much of this I was handed, but most of the actual folders within the folder I created. Okay, so you see video quizzes, slideshows, etc., etc. Those were what I added into to the curriculum for the most part. And I think there's one more slide, right? Oh, like I said, it's very contextualized. It's very different from, say, a community ed class for teaching driving, because this is specifically for language learners. And I don't think our students most of them would thrive in a regular community ed class setting. So strategies and challenges. Strategies, like I showed you already, teacher slideshows, the teacher website, the online manual. We actually read the entire manual together over the course of the 9 to 11, 12 weeks. It's long, it's boring, but it's necessary. At least we can hear the audio and we can slow it down, and I can stop as needed. And that link is on the Minnesota Drivers and Vehicle Services website that Carly showed us at the beginning. Quizlet, of course, and I do expect students to review between classes. Weekly practice tests, I embed those right into my slideshow. And then challenges, student persistence. I think if anybody has the magic answer to that, you could be a millionaire, because 25 students will sign up, 15 will show up, 8 will persist. I mean, that's why we're trying different things, I guess. Pacing and differentiating. Yeah, some students are coming in with a CASAS life and work reading score of 215, and some have a 200. There's a huge gap there. And so some students are getting a little bored, and some are just struggling to keep up. So, and then technology, of course, anytime you have an online class, a Zoom class, we do use iPads in the classroom. And that means students that attend at the building when I'm teaching HighFlex, they do have that, do have access to the iPads. But sometimes things go wrong with those. And one of my major hangups is that the online manual with audio doesn't always match. The audio is not always updated when they update the print manual. I don't give students a copy of the print manual, but I do encourage them to either print one out on their own, or of course refer to the site. There was a time when you could order them for like $5, and I'm unsure if that's a possibility, but maybe they could even pay for it to be printed at their site, or however that would work. So, okay, I think that is everything from me. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Kim. And there's been some great questions in the chat. And just looking at the time, I want to make sure that we have time for our last presenter, Craig. And maybe we'll be able to backtrack at the end and respond to some of those questions. But
Okay.
Craig, are you able to share your video and audio?
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yay. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Been teaching a CDL course in Bloomington for, I guess since 2018, to varying degrees of success. Lately, our last one was pretty good. We had it online and statewide. So that was a good class. We ended up with, I think, 11 that kind of made it through. So you can go ahead to the first slide. Assessment level, we're looking for CASAS goals is what we use, 204 plus. We're looking at students who can read in English, but going through the manual all by themselves is a little too difficult. Schedule-wise, we have done it online. Like this in the fall, we did this once per week for 2 hours at a time. And then I would hang on for half an hour or so afterwards to answer questions and help with technical issues and things like that. Coming up this spring, we're going to do kind of a high flex situation. We'll be in person, but also available to do it online. And hopefully getting a field trip to the transportation department. So that's a little bit of a fun and different time. Our CDL course focuses in a lot on the Class B, which is school buses, regular transit buses, and then single unit trucks, not the big semi trucks. So those are the keys there. I think that's it for this slide. Metro South has gone to Canvas as our main delivery method. We started it, I started the course in Google Classroom, so I have a lot of things still on Google Forms and things like that, a lot of quizzes that I made. But Canvas is really a powerful tool, I would say. It works pretty well. We're able to collect some proxy hours using it because we were able to get this passed through as, I think it's the IELT process. And so we do in the classroom, I will go through small sections of the manual, but I don't read it word for word. What I do is I ask students to kind of look at it ahead of time. And then I point out the most important things, say, hey, pay attention to this part right here. You'll probably get a question on this later. That sort of thing. We do a lot of videos, just find that to be very engaging, and then adding discussion about the videos. And then I've created quizzes for each class, one or two, sometimes two quizzes for each class, that those are their homework. And then I set that passing bar at 80%, just like the driving tests. So they get kind of used to that. But of course, they can repeat those as many times as they want to. So that's a nice option. I do have Quizlet. I've used that as well. And do encourage students to use that for a lot of the vocabulary that comes through in the CDL. It's a little different. And of course, all of these students that I have already have a regular Class D license. So they should be familiar with most of the rules of the road and things like that. It's just adding in these extra pieces for the big trucks and buses. I talked about the quizzes, and then towards the end, I kind of missed the very beginning of the presentation here. I don't know if you use the drivingtest.org from the St. Paul Public Library. I think that's an excellent resource. It gives you the access to everything there, not just one or two practice tests, but you can do all of them, and it's got a lot of them for the CDL, as well as all the different special endorsements that you might be going for, whether it's passenger or hazardous materials or whatnot. And then of course, when they're ready to test, they go ahead and have to make their own appointment with the driver and vehicle services. Yep. Okay, next slide. So I think I briefly mentioned, I asked students and make it homework to read the sections in the manual that we'll be covering for the next week, so that they have a little bit of familiarity with the topic before we start. And then I try as much as possible to get any of the main points out through videos that I find on YouTube or somewhere else. Just find that going through the manual step by, line by line just doesn't work too well for me anyway. The quizzes I think are great and really helpful. We use those practice tests from drivingtest.org. Certainly there's a lot of challenges, and I know that everybody's kind of said the same things. Persistence is definitely an issue. Technology skills, when we've got a Google Meet going with 15 to 17 people on it, it gets a little harder when they're not familiar with it. Another challenge about the CDL in general is, there's a huge need for bus drivers I think every district in the country is probably short on drivers. I know at one point, our Bloomington district itself was short 20 drivers. Um, and they're short mechanics and they're short, management staff too. Um, and I don't know if anybody else saw it, but I think it was in one of the NEA emails or something like that, that the unions are trying to get pay increased for bus drivers as well, because, they do okay. They can start even up to $25 an hour in some places. But in a lot of places, it's not full-time work. They don't get benefits, things like that too. So, and then, some of those people that do think about being a school bus driver, then they see their other options, whether it's a city bus or driving a truck, and then they'll switch gears and go another route. So, yeah, I guess I went through that really fast. So I guess at this point, I'm ready for the questions.
Well, there's definitely some questions in the chat. Susan, do you mind
Okay.
reading those to Craig? One I know was, do you have any background with CDL?
Oh,
Or do you have one yourself? Or how did you stumble into CDL here?
yeah. Yeah. Well, I did have a CDL at one point in my life. I was a school bus driver for 1 year. Found that to be very challenging. But then, kept it up as a bus driver for church camps and things like that for a long time. Don't have a CDL anymore.
But you have had in the past.
I did in the past, yes.
All right. And then there's a question from Edgar asking, once students get their regular driver's license, what kind of documentation do they need to take the CDL test?
Boy, that's good question. I think all they really need is their actual license. They can't go right away. I think they need about 6 months to a year before they can take the actual CDL test. I've been searching for that information for a long time and get various responses, so not 100% sure.
And I think most of the rest of what's in the chat is mostly conversation, but if anybody had another question that we didn't address, please let me know.
Well, my name is Edgar. I was just wondering on that question that I was asking is because a lot of students who are now, taking the classes to pass the driver's tests are undocumented, and sometimes I get questions like that. And so I was
Sure.
just trying to get, to see if somebody knew some of the answers to some of the questions that I get from students. In this one would be like, what kind of like legal documentation would be needed to go do the CDL test?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's probably more of a question on what the job will require or what the employer will require. Obviously, if you're going to be a school bus driver, they do a lot of background checks and things like that. And you need, legal verification of that you can work. I mean, that's for any job too. But for the test itself, I don't think there's anything else required besides the actual license. And then, so this is a little bit different too. For our students when they're after you get your permit, the suggestion is go get a job right then. You don't need your license to get your job. The school bus company, the transit companies, they'll all train you and everything you need to know and give you the behind the wheel practice and all of that. So, and help you get through that process. So as soon as somebody can get in, at least get the permit done, then they can start looking for a job, and then they get all that guidance from their employers.
Hi, Craig. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Yeah, my name is Damon Bassett. I work for Minneapolis ABE, Adult Education. We've been trying to create a career pathway course for CDL, and we were thinking about maybe what a terminology course would be beneficial. Most of our students go to school maybe even from 4 to 6 hours a day, and how would that fit in with their schedule? I mean, what's the hours like to really get this done?
Well, obviously that's going to vary a lot from person to person.
Okay.
If it, boy, I don't know. My class, we've done, a 20-hour class is basically
Okay.
the way it goes. But I think it could be done faster, certainly for a native English speaker. And it could take longer, for someone who is kind of on the lower level of understanding some of those the more basic vocabulary.
Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. Yep. And I'll reach out to you in the future for some more conversation. But I know the CDL is a big deal, and you can really benefit from it. So
yeah, it's it is a good job, and there's a lot of opportunity. Um, and I know we're going to do another course available open statewide too. So,
yeah.
Yep.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot.
Welcome.
And then there's a question in the chat from Carly. Are the CDL tests only offered in English? That is my understanding, but other languages are offered for the Class D test.
Yeah, I believe that is true. I believe it is only available in English as well, unless that is a recent change. I don't know.
No, very recently I looked it up, and because it's nationally it has to be in English.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Well, we've been kind of taking questions along the way, and I really appreciate how engaged everyone has been. We are just about like 2 minutes away, so we'll see if we get another question or two in the chat. But I want to just take a minute to thank the panelists who were presenting today. Here, let me find my video. There we go. It was great to hear from all four of you. And of course, there were similarities, but then also some differences. So many great resources were shared. And hopefully there's some things that you can take and implement right away, but there could also just be the start of a conversation and a dialogue with one or more of these panelists. So we've got their names and emails on this screen. Again, the links, the resources, the Quizlet, and all of the things that were shared are in the slides, which you'll find in the participant folder. And we've been recording, so if you want to share this recording with a colleague afterwards, feel free to do that. But thank you for your questions, and great job, panelists.
And there actually are a couple more questions in the chat now, if we want to go to them. So the last time I looked at the information about the CDL permit, the proof of citizenship was required. And I think we're all still waiting to see if driver's license for all will influence this in the future. So I guess that's more of a comment than a question. And then there's a question from Bethany. I do have a general question. We have a student who has a prior DUI from many years ago. He asked if there were any organizations that could help him pay the fees. I said I didn't know of any, but that I would ask. Does anyone know of agencies that can assist?
Harley.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. I was going to say, I definitely know of some organizations, and the names are like lost from my brain right now, but I can definitely follow up with you on that. Because I worked at Ramsey County Correctional Facility for 14 years. So that was a common conversation, let me tell you. And I think there's like a driving diversion program where you get on a payment plan. There used to be options to, you know, serve your fines away, but there were certain fines that you couldn't get around. And one of them was the DWI fine. But chances are, if somebody has a DUI or a DWI, they probably have continued to drive and incurred more fines. So I can follow up with you after this. Thank you, everyone. It is past 3:30 now, so thanks for joining us.